Hi, my name is Neil Pelton, and I'm a new developer that learned through Savvy Coders. I attended the University of Missouri for physical therapy, but I recently made the switch to software development because I realized that physical therapy wasn't what I was looking for in a job. I loved the idea of having multiple ways to solve a problem, and I've always been rather invested in all sorts of technology, so learning how these applications are made and function behind the scenes really appealed to me. Through this course, I became Agile certified. In my Agile team, I played the role of the developer for the first half of the course and the Scrum Master in the second half. I participated and facilitated daily stand-ups, as well as sprint reviews and backlog grooming, sprint retrospectives, and sprint planning. My capstone project for this course is a website for a fashion company my friend and I want to start. The problem I addressed was not getting enough feedback on its designs and having limited places to display them. We didn't want to create a clothing line that doesn't sell, especially in the beginning stages of the company. The purpose of my capstone is to allow for customer feedback on each design before they're ever manufactured. This will not only solve his problem, but it will also save money on production costs by making designs we know our customers will enjoy. Some of the things I used to create this webpage were JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Node, Express, MongoDB, Axios, Navigo, VS Code, Markdown, Git, and GitHub. The target audience for our brand is typically going to be younger generations, since they tend to be the most expressive when it comes to clothing choice. We deal in graphic design wear, and on average, these demographics purchase graphic design clothing more than the middle-aged generations such as Gen X. For my SWOT analysis and research phase, I visited a lot of fashion startup websites, as well as major retailers. One thing I noticed was that a lot of the smaller brands would display information about their company first, and some scrolling was required to see the product. In my capstone, I made sure that their designs were the first thing that a customer sees when visiting my page. Since we only want feedback on our designs, I wanted to capture the viewer's attention immediately and avoid making them scroll to the page to find the most important part. So, as a disclaimer, I drew these designs in 15 minutes and I am not the designer. But anyways, on the right side of the screen, you can see my homepage wireframe. I followed this wireframe more than the others, only changing the number of designs in the features section, as well as adding another column to the design section. All of the pages in my SPA are responsive, so when you go to a mobile view, it goes down to just 2 columns instead of 4. You will also notice that I have a list icon up here that hides all of the navigation links as well, for mobile views only. For my products API page, I displayed one of the 2 APIs I used to show my understanding. This one is an external API that is pulling information from a third-party website called fakestoreapi.com. In the root index.js under my router hooks, my highlighted section, I set up a case statement for the products page. I used Axios, get, and then requests to make an API request without having to parse through the data itself. For authentication, I use an API key in my .env file that only I have access to. This keeps others from getting into my database and changing information. This API in particular has loads of information for each fake product, so I had to focus on various elements of that without calling for every piece of information about the product. I settled on the title, image, description, and price. And you can see that right here. I created a table to display the information by category from the API, and when you are in the mobile view for my products API page, it only displays the title and the image as well. For the About Us page, I deviated from my wireframe quite a bit, I would say. You will notice that I had 2 images in my wireframe, one of each of us, and I figured it would be better to switch it to just one. A lot less work, it's a lot easier, looks better. I made separate sections. The first section shows how we started and came up with the company idea, and the second section is divided into 2 columns, one with a picture of me and my buddy, as well as the path that we each took to get there. Moving on to the form page, this one looks very different from the wireframe as well. That's because I didn't have any social media platforms to include, and I didn't like how the form section looked. So in here you will see my responses API. This is where it all gets sent to. For the form page, I built my own API to store the information using render.com. I use an Express server to connect to MongoDB, which also stores all the data from the form into clusters. Using the routers and all of this stuff from Express, you can see right here that I initialize the Express server up here and to grab the router from the Express framework. This next line imports the responses into the model of the router. The next line instantiates the router and stores in a router function. I then created the record in MongoDB Atlas using mongoose.js. I take requests from the body and make a new response model with this next line. When you scroll down more, you will notice that I have all of my get functions and my delete functions, or methods, sorry. The first one gets every response that has been submitted into the form. The next one is by ID specifically, and the last one is delete by ID. So when the form is submitted, I'll actually go ahead and fill this out real quick. So just say testing through Netlify. It may take a second to load, so I'll submit it now. But when you submit it, it will display the information that you submitted at the bottom of the page for others to see. And just like the products API, I used Axios to make an API request without having to parse through the data itself using get, then, and post requests. Now this may take a second to load, like I said. In functionality, the responses page, which it should take me to, is extremely similar to the products page. It has a get request that pulls everything from the API, then requests that console logs all the data, and is displayed onto the table. Just like the products API, I use an API key that only I have access to for authentication. I experimented a lot with this trying to get things to work, and in doing so, I used Insomnia for loads and loads of local testing. You can see at the top that I also used Netlify to host my web page. Okay. Sorry about this. Whatever, I'll move on until this loads. Some obstacles that I dealt with were the home page. It was very difficult for me in the very beginning. There it goes. Okay, sorry. Taking a step back. You can see that these are the two responses that I just submitted when I pressed the submit button twice trying to get it to load. And it's very, like I said, it's very similar to how it displays the information from the products page and the products API. So for the obstacles, getting the pictures to load like this was very difficult for me. I initially used Flexbox, but I wasn't able to set it up how I wanted to. I wasn't able to make them their own categories of image, title, and description and separate them accordingly. But I dealt with this by creating a grid, which you can see right here. I have the initial grid holding all of the items in it together, and then each one in particular, each different design has its own separate grid inside of it. This is also the thing that I'm very proud about with my project. This took a lot of troubleshooting to get done, a lot of extra work, and I'm really glad it turned out how it did. For the future state, and what I want to do next with the project, I would like to reverse the columns of the responses page, so the most recent form submission shows up at the top. I would also like to add a like button feature so I can see how many others agree with or have had the same problem, so I can prioritize which responses are most urgent to deal with. I'd like to address the sizing of the fake products API on smaller screens, and make a pop-up that displays all of the information instead of just the title and the image when you click on the title. Again, for mobile view. For the home page, similar to the responses, I'd like to add a like button feature under all the images so I can get a gauge for what people think when they visit my website, what they think of each individual design, as well as a comment feature for suggestions and critiques. Lastly, I want to add a user submissions page for all customers to send in their own designs to be featured on the page and possibly manufactured in the future. My name is Neil Pelton, and this concludes my Capstone project. I want to give a special thanks to everyone on the Savvy Coders team for making this learning experience so enjoyable and manageable. It was truly a pleasure. Thanks for watching.